The world hangs on a thin thread, and that is the psyche of man. Assume that certain fellows in Moscow lose their nerve or their common sense for a bit, and the whole world is in fire and flames. You see? It is, nowadays we are not threatened by elementary catastrophes. There is no such thing as an H-bomb. That is all man's doing. We are the great danger. The psyche is the great danger. What if something goes wrong with the psyche? The child is born as a high complexity with existing determinants that never waver through the whole life, and that give the child his character already in the earliest childhood. A mother recognizes an individuality of her child. And so if you observe carefully, you see the tremendous difference, even in very small children. And these peculiarities express themselves in every way. So first, the peculiarities express themselves in all childish activities, in the way how it plays, in the things it is interested in. There are children who are tremendously interested in all moving things, and in movement chiefly. All the things you see that affect the body. And so they are interested in what the eyes do, what the ears do, how far you can bore into the nose with your finger, you know. Now you see these things, these interests express themselves in a typically childish way in children, and later on they express themselves in other peculiarities, which are still the same, but it doesn't come from the fact that they once have done such and such a thing in childhood. It is the character that is doing it. There is a definite inherited complexity. You see, we are born into a pattern. We are a pattern. We are a structure that is pre-established through the genes. It is a biological order of our mental functioning. As, for instance, our biological or physiological function follows a pattern. Or the behavior of any bird or insect follows a pattern, and that is the same with us. Man has a certain pattern that makes him specifically human, and no man is born without it. We are only deeply unconscious of these facts because we live all by our senses and outside of ourselves. If a man could look into it himself, he would discover it. And when a man discovers it, in our days, he thinks he's crazy. And he may be crazy. While they live a conscious life, all the time a myth is played in the unconscious. A myth that extends over centuries. Namely, archetypal ideas, a stream of archetypal ideas that goes on through one individual, through the centuries. You see, it is like a continuous stream, and that comes then to the daylight in the great movements. Say in political movements or in spiritual movements. For instance, in the time before Reformation, people dreamt of the great change. And that's the reason why such great transformations could be predicted. If somebody has been clever enough to see what there is going on in people's mind, in the unconscious mind, would be able to predict it. For instance, I have predicted the Nazi rising in Germany through the observation of my German patients. They had dreams in which the whole thing was anticipated. And with considerable detail in years before Hitler came in the beginning of the, well, I could say the year 1919, I was sure that something was threatening in Germany, something very big and very catastrophic. And I only knew it through the observation of the unconscious. When you observe the world, you see people, you see houses, you see the sky, you see tangible objects. But when you observe yourself within, you see moving images, a world of images, generally known as fantasies. Yet these fantasies are facts. You see, it is a fact that a man has such and such a fantasy. And it is such a tangible fact, for instance, that when a man has a certain fantasy, another man may lose his life. Or a bridge is built. These houses were all fantasies. Everything you do here, all of the houses, everything was fantasy to begin with. And fantasy has a proper reality. That is not to be forgotten. Fantasy is not nothing. It is, of course, not a tangible object, but it is a fact, nevertheless. It is, say, a form of energy, despite the fact we can't measure it. It is a manifestation of something. And that is a reality. That is just a reality as, for instance, the peace treaty of Versailles or something like that. It is no more. You can't show it. But it has been a fact. And so the psychical events are facts, are realities. And when you observe the stream of images within, you observe an aspect of the world within. And so, you see, the man who is going by the external world, by the influences of the external world, say society or perceptions, sense perceptions, thinks that he is more valid, you know, because this is valid, this is real. And the man who goes by the subjective factor is not valid because subjective factor is nothing. Yeah. No, that man is just as well based, because he is bases himself upon the world from within. And so he is quite right, even if he says, oh, there's nothing but my fantasy, you know. And of course that is the introvert. And that the introvert is always afraid of the external world. He will tell you, when you ask him, he will be apologetic about it. He will say, of course, yes, I know only my fantasies. And he has always a resentment. And as the world in general, particularly America, is extroverted like hell, the introvert has no place. Because he doesn't know that he beholds the world from within. And that gives him dignity, and that gives him certainty. The way in which a man should behave is given by an archetype. And therefore, you see, the primitives tell such stories. A great deal of education goes through storytelling. You see, if you are unconscious about certain things that ought to be conscious, then you are dissociated. And then you are a man whose left hand never knows what the right is doing and counteracts or interferes with the right hand. Now, such a man is hampered all over the place. Yeah. The people that are in public life, that they have a certain way of presenting themselves. For instance, take the doctor. He has a certain way. For instance, he has good bedside manners, and he behaves as one expects a doctor behaves. He may even identify himself with it and believe that he is what he appears to be. And so when he's a professor, he's also supposed to behave in a certain way so that it is plausible that he is a professor, you know. So the persona is a certain complicated system of behavior which is partially dictated by society and partially dictated by the expectations or the wishes one nurses oneself. Now, this is not the real personality, in spite of the fact that people will assure you that that is all quite real and quite honest, yet it is not. Now, such a performance, or say, yeah, the performance of the persona is quite all right, as long as you know that you are not identical with the way in which you appear. But if you are unconscious of this fact, then you get into sometimes very disagreeable conflicts. Is he the man as he is at home or in intimate relations, or is he the man that appears in public? It is a question of Jekyll and Hyde. And in as much as they are unconscious of themselves, they don't know it. They think they're all one. Everybody sees that they are two. And some know him only from one side, so others know him only from the other side. And then there are situations that clash, because the way you are creates certain situations with people in your relations, and these two situations don't chime in. They are just dissonances. It may be, you know, that what the unconscious has to say is so disagreeable that one prefers not to listen. And in most cases, people would be probably less neurotic if they could admit the things. Because these things are always a bit difficult or disagreeable or inconvenient or something of the sort. So there is always a certain amount of repression. When in treatment, for instance, in the treatment of neurosis, you have to do with that personal unconscious for quite a while. And then only dreams come that show that the collective unconscious is touched upon. Yes. Now, as long as there is material for personal nature, you have to deal with the personal unconscious. But when you get to say to a question, to a problem, which is no more merely personal, but also collective, you get collective dreaming. There are cases who know just as much about their own neurosis as I know about it, in a way. In such cases, I can start right away with posing the problem. For instance, there is a case, a professor of philosophy, and he imagines that he has cancer. He shows me several dozen X-ray plates that prove that there is no cancer. And he says, of course I have no cancer, but nevertheless I'm afraid I could have one. You see, I have consulted so many surgeons, and they all assure me there is none, and I know there is none, but I might have one, you see, and that's enough. Now, you see, such a case can stop from one moment to the other. He simply stops thinking such a foolish thing, you see. But that is exactly what he can't do. You know it is nonsense, and why should you think it? Or what for should you think it? Well, and what is that power that makes you think such a thing? It's like a possession, you know. Exactly. It's like a demon in him that makes him think like that, in spite of the fact that he doesn't want it. You see, then we have the problem. That is the problem for an intellectual man. And then I say, now, you see, you don't know, you have no answer. I have no answer. Now what are we going to do? I say, now we must see what you dream, because the dream is a manifestation of the unconscious side. Right. Now he never has heard of the unconscious side. So I must explain to him that he has an unconscious, and that the dream is a manifestation of it, and if we succeed in analyzing the dream, we might get an idea about that power that makes him think like that. You see? In such a case, one can begin right away with the analysis of dreams. And in all cases that are a bit serious, Mind you, this is not a simple case. This is a very serious and difficult case, in spite of the simplicity of the phenomenology, of the symptomatology. In all cases, after the preliminaries, as it were, history of the family, the whole medical anamnesis, etc., we come to that question. What is it in your unconscious that makes you wrong, that hinders you to think normally? And then we are there where we can begin with the observation of the unconscious. And then, day by day, one goes on by the data the unconscious produces. You see, we discuss the dream, and that gives a new surface to the whole problem. And he will have another dream, and the next dream gives again an answer, because the unconscious is in a compensatory relation to consciousness. And after a while, we get the full picture. And if he has the full picture and has the necessary moral stamina, well, then he can be cured. But in the end, it is a moral question whether a man applies what he had learned or not. And that is the thing that people are looking for. An archetypal experience that gives them an incorruptible value. You see, they depend upon other conditions. They depend upon their desires, their ambitions, depend upon other people, because they have no value in themselves. They have nothing in themselves. They are only rational, and they are not in the possession of a treasure that would make them independent. Man is not complete if he is not conscious of that aspect of things. So, you see, a man is not complete when he lives in a world of statistical truth. He must live in a world of his biological truth. That is his biological truth. That is not merely statistics. Yet our natural science makes everything to an average, reduces everything to an average, and of course all the individual qualities are wiped out. That, of course, is most unbecoming. It is unhygienic. It deprives people of their specific values, where they are individuals. It deprives them of the most important experiences of their life, where they experience their own value, namely the creative background of their personality. And we think we are able to be born today and to live in no myth, without history. That is a disease. That's absolutely abnormal, because man is not born every day. He's once born in a specific historical setting with the specific historical qualities, and therefore he is only complete when he has a relation to these things. It's just as if you were born without eyes and ears, when you are growing up with no connection with the past. From the standpoint of natural science, you need no connection with the past. You can wipe it out. And that is a mutilation of the human being. And so we don't know our unconscious personality. We have hints, we have certain ideas, but we don't know it really. Nobody can say where man ends. That is the beauty of it, you know. Yeah. It's very interesting. Yeah. The unconscious of man can reach God knows where. There we are going to make discoveries.